According to recent Twitter statistics, 70% of consumers think brand positivity and share positive stories. With people looking for inspiration and hope during a challenging time, there's an opportunity for brands and a challenge for marketing agencies to brighten up social media pages and provide a much needed break from doom scrolling. Interestingly enough, the ever-growing podcast sector is set to surpass $1 billion with 32% of Americans listening to podcasts at least once a month. Podcasts offer a great way to communicate brand stories to an audience that might be looking for alternatives to social media scrolling or browsing a website. This different medium enables people to tap into content they really enjoy. So, whether you're tasked to help clients create live video or podcasts or even written content, the struggle for marketing agencies is the same. How do we tell other people's stories? That's what we're digging into today's episode of Agency Accelerated. Welcome back to Agency Accelerated, where we explore ways to grow and scale your agency with some of the most trusted brands and experts in the industry. I'm Stephanie Liu, and we're live every other Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and you guessed it, LinkedIn. Make sure you head on over to agorapulse.com/calendar and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Make sure to stay until the very end because you'll also get a chance to get your hands on an easy way to add more revenue to your marketing agency. So, hey, I want to give a quick shout out to the crew that's already here. Let us know where you're tuning in from. I would love to hear how you are doing. So, hey, listen, friend, consumers are looking for authentic and trustworthy over perfectly polished and staged ads. In a world where 46% of college students purposefully share, like, and engage with specific content to train algorithms to give them content that they actually want to see, they're also sticking to old-fashioned and boring strategies. Well, it's a no-no for agencies today. So instead, focusing on content that's real, honest, and to the point is an absolute must. And that's where storytelling really comes in. Today's guest is an author, entrepreneur, consultant, evangelist, podcaster, and if I got this right, surfer as well. Well, throughout it all, he's also a storyteller, and I couldn't be more excited to introduce him. So, having said that, let's go ahead and bring on Guy Kawasaki. He's the
Good
chief
morning.
evangelist of Canva. Hey, Guy.
Thank
He's
you.
Yeah, super excited to have you here. My goodness. Let me give your quick bio real quickly because I was like, wait a second. You got the Remarkable People podcast. You've got a
Yeah.
surfboard on the way,
Yeah.
right? Executive Fellow of the Haas School of Business over at
Yep.
UC Berkeley, Adjunct Professor of the University of New South Wales. You're also the Chief Evangelist of Apple and a trustee of the Wikimedia Foundation. How do
Wait,
you
wait.
have time to do all of
Wait,
this?
wait, wait, wait. Those two last things were in my past. I'm no longer chief evangelist of Apple or on the Wikipedia board of trustees.
That's good to know. We'll go
It
ahead
is
and
good to know.
we'll let our producer go ahead and cut that out.
Yeah.
So having said that,
Smack him or her around a little bit there.
that's right. You got that right. You've also written The Wise Guy, The Art of the
Mhm.
Start 2.0, The Art of Social Media Enchantment, and 11 other books. Honestly, Guy, how you have time for all of this absolutely amazes me.
Well, I'm old, so I had a long time to pull all that off. It's not like I'm 30.
I love it. Welcome to the show, Guy. How you been? How you doing? How's your week so far?
So far, so good, but it's only Wednesday, so
That
it's
is
supposed to
true.
rain here in Santa Cruz, so that's good too.
You know what? I was thinking about that too because I'm here in San Diego,
Mhm.
and I was like, you know what? The clouds have been rolling in. I wonder if it's going to be raining or not because it's a
Yeah.
whole thing here in San Diego. I don't know how it is over there, but when it rains
Yep.
here in San Diego, it's like everyone out of office. That's it. Call it a day. get some hot chocolate, and we're good to go.
And where do you go when you go out of the office to get hot chocolate?
We watched Netflix. That's what we do.
How about Apple TV? Ted Lasso.
That's right. I've been
Yeah.
seeing that pop up in my social media news feed lately, and I'm like, you know what? Gotta pay
It's
attention to that.
it's
So then,
I only subscribe to Apple TV just for Ted Lasso. It's the only thing I watch on Apple TV.
that makes sense. Well, if it's coming from you, then then I
Yeah.
gotta write that down and make sure I get that squared away.
I,
Hey,
I I don't watch that squid thing though. So
oh, you don't really?
yeah,
Okay, I feel
yeah.
like okay. I gotta get the show back on track because otherwise I'm like, come on, man, we could talk so
Well, that's
much.
part of telling stories.
That's right. So, hey, Guy, can you start off with sharing a little more about the work that you did over at Apple and what you're doing currently now
Sure.
with Canva? Because we have so many people that are absolutely
Okay.
enchanted by Canva.
So at Apple, I worked there from geez, 1984 to 1987, and then 1995 to 1997. The first time at Apple, I was in the Macintosh division. I was a software evangelist. So my job was to convince people to write Mac software. Second time, I was Apple's chief evangelist. And that time, my job was to convince the Macintosh community to stay loyal to Apple and Macintosh. Uh, Many people don't remember, but back in the 95, 97 timeframe, Apple was supposed to die. And in fact, Michael Dell went on the record and said, Apple should take the cash that it has, which was about $2 billion, and give it back to the shareholders and close up shop because it's all
What?
over for Apple. So much for Michael Dell's wisdom. But yeah, that's what I did. Now at Canva, I've been at Canva for about 7 years. And I am Canva's chief evangelist. And evangelism comes from words meaning bringing the good news. So I bring the good news of Canva, how Canva has democratized design so that everybody can become a better communicator.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And wasn't it recently that there's video that's now involved with Canva?
Yes, yes, yes. Now we can help you make video as well as the traditional graphics.
Yeah, so much. I love that you mentioned that it democratizes graphic design and storytelling because it really does make it so much easier. It's
Yeah.
I could easily just type in something and say, "Hey, I need a proposal template." And
And
boom,
we
there
we
it
have
is.
we have I think it's like 800 different design types, where a design type is Pinterest, eBay, Twitter, the album photo, poster, business card, presentation. And by the way, since many people are who are listening to this probably have to do a lot of presentations, you need to put PowerPoint in your rear view mirror because we have several hundred templates for the design type presentation, 16 by 9, pre-designed. The palette's already all set up for you. And you change the pictures and the text. So, basically we're replacing PowerPoint there. But wait, there's more. There's also the ability to record yourself picture in picture. So, if you want to tell a story with PowerPoint and you're not doing it live as we are now, you would put the PowerPoint slash now in Canva presentation behind you, and you'd be in a little circle. And so you could say, as you're on each slide, you could say, all right, so here's our mission. Next slide, here's our strategic strengths. Here's our go-to-market strategy. Here's the competition, and the slide would change, and you'd still be talking. So that's a
Yeah.
way of just instead of sending a static presentation to tell your story and praying that people get it from the slides, your face in a video can be explaining every slide, which is very, very powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Video altogether, I mean, that makes it super exciting. I know. Don't you love the sound effects from our producer?
Hey, I can do sound effects too. So see, or
No,
more
that's not a sound
appropriate for
effect.
us.
Guy actually has like a live audience in
That's
his office to make it
right.
feel like, "Hey, everyone, I'm here, got the lights going."
I'm on the
Love it.
stage here. Yep.
You're on the stage pacing around. I love it. So, Guy, let's talk about the Remarkable People podcast, right?
Okay.
Let's let's tell the folks what the podcast is about and how you actually came up with the idea.
Yeah. So it's called the Remarkable People Podcast, and guess who we have as guests? Remarkable people. And so the whole point of this is for me to help my listeners become more remarkable by listening to the stories, the S word, of remarkable people. And so, who are some guests? I've had Jane Goodall, Margaret Atwood, Angela Duckworth, MacArthur Award winner, Stephen Wolfram, MacArthur Award winner, Ronnie Lott, best safety in the history of the NFL. Roy Yamaguchi of Roy's Restaurants. They have one in San Diego.
They
Christy
do.
Yamaguchi. Yeah. Christy Yamaguchi, no relation, gold medal winner. Let's see. Did I say Jane Goodall? I said Jane Goodall at
You
the
did,
start.
yeah.
Uh, Katie Milkman from Wharton, up and coming social psychology expert. Bob Cialdini, godfather of influence.
Yeah.
Dave Parker, godfather of branding. Let's see. Steven Pinker, Andrew Yang. I mean, I have 100 guests. I could just go on
Yeah,
and
no, no,
on
no,
and
no.
on.
Honestly, you reached over 100 episodes with the podcast. I mean, congratulations.
Well,
Here.
actually, this today is number 99, and it was Linda Zhang, who is get this is the product manager of the Ford 150 Lightning, the electric Ford 150. She moved from China when she was 8 years old. She's 5'3", and she's the product manager for the Ford 150, which is the macho truck. So the juxtaposition of those two things is very interesting. And I think the Ford 150 maybe, over the course of time, it may be more important to the electrification of cars than the Tesla. Although Tesla
Ooh.
clearly started the whole trend, but Ford 150 is going to make it so that it's not just for, jerky West Coast venture capitalists living in Silicon Valley driving their Teslas. This is going to make electric cars mainstream. And then next week for the 100th episode, we have the Seth Godin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's such a big major milestone. I know that here for Agency Accelerated Guy,
Mm-hmm.
you're our 8th episode, so we have a ton of catching up to do. That's right.
Yeah, the first 100 are the hardest.
Any tips? Any tips on like how to make that smooth sailing?
Oh, we could talk for about half an hour. So you really want tips? I mean,
Yeah,
are you just being
it's not my
conversational?
no, I would really love to know, and I know that our podcast producer right now would
Okay.
be interested
So,
in knowing as well.
okay. So number one, what started me off very fast is that my first guest was Jane Goodall.
Mhm.
So when your first guest is Jane Goodall, you tell your second guest, well, you can be on the same podcast as Jane Goodall. Not many people think, oh, no, I'm far superior to Jane Goodall. Why would I lower myself to a podcast that had only Jane Goodall? So then after you get Jane Goodall, then you get Margaret Atwood and you get Ariana Huffington. And, pretty soon you just say, okay, I have Ariana Huffington and Jane Goodall and Margaret Atwood. Perhaps you'd like to be on it. Very few people say no to that.
Yeah.
So maybe in a much smaller way, you can say, well, I've had Guy Kawasaki. And then people say, oh, must be I should take this serious. Or who's Guy Kawasaki? One or two reactions. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is I probably spend 2 or 3 hours prepping for every interview because I like to really dig into a person's past. It's not like a producer hands me the Wikipedia article printout and says, 5 minutes before we go on and say, have at it. So there's a lot of prep. And
Yeah.
the third thing is I really work my ass off. I personally edit every episode. I take the first pass, which is 2 or 3 hours, and then it goes to a sound designer for another 3 or 4 hours. So it's probably 5 or 6 hours of editing in every hour of Guy Kawasaki's podcast. That's another tip. So
Yeah.
it's, don't just think it's turn on the recorder and go. Another tip is, I think one of the most important things you can do, and it is a goal for me, is I try to ask the very first question, a question that has never been asked of this person and truly shows that I did the research.
Yeah.
So, when I open up with Angela Duckworth, I ask if her daughter is still playing cello. And the reason why I ask that is because I want Angela to say, huh, this guy really did research. He knows my daughter plays the cello. Or was it
Yeah.
viola? Anyway, something like that. And so I think that's very important because from then on, the guest understands that, this person didn't just read my Wikipedia entry. This person has read my book, seen my videos, et cetera, et cetera. That's very, very important. And then
Um,
another tip. See, you started me.
You
Tell me
know,
when to
you're
shut
on
up.
it. You're like, you
Yeah,
could tell when someone's passionate about it, right?
yeah,
Because as you said, you could expand upon it. And I think, if anything, I heard Descript mentioned before we started, and I
yes.
was like, I
The
absolutely
script is a
love Descript.
crucial tool. The script is a tool that takes your audio, puts it into a machine transcribed format, which is not far from perfect. It's not transcription in the sense of, okay, now I can let deaf people read it. It's transcription in the sense that it kind of documents your audio. But the beauty of Descript is you can select things in Descript in text and delete or ignore the text, and then the audio will be deleted or ignored. So this is much better than going back and forth with an iMovie or something saying, I want to take out that let me capture that. You can
Yeah.
select the word and remove it by selecting text. That is a huge thing. Another tool tip is I use Squadcast, and Squadcast is so much better than using something like Zoom or Skype, because Zoom and Skype, you're always dependent on everybody's internet speed and internet quality. But
Yeah.
what Squadcast does is it's what's called a double ender. So it's recording locally on my end and on the guest end, and frequently it uploads to the cloud. But fundamentally, the recording is from my microphone to my computer. It's not from my microphone to my computer over the internet, through Zoom and back and compressed and all this crap. It is just that 1 foot distance. And at the end, you end up with two local files, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and another tip I have is like my goal for a guest is to make the guest look as remarkable and as articulate and as communicative as possible. So now this is something that some people would debate me because they believe you turn on the recorder and you be open and transparent and true to life. And if they say 250 times in an hour, which people do, that's real life. That's how they speak. You should be true
Yeah.
to the, whatever. I don't have that theory. My theory is I want my guest to look so articulate. You see, I was just amazed at the articulateness of Guy's guests. That's my goal. So, I take out the ums and the uhs and the wells and knows and uh see, I even do it. You should take those. You should take out that that I just said. And then lots of people when they're interviewing, they go uh uh
Yeah.
and you hear that all the time. And so all of that stuff should be taken out. I think that that's the way to do it. And I also think that when you look over the course of your podcast, my goal is that 90% of the time the guest is doing the talking, 10% is me. There are
Yeah.
podcasters, highly successful, highly visible, highly paid, who are more like 50-50 or really more like 90-10 the other way. But
Mhm.
listen, if I get a Jane Goodall for you, you're there for her, not me. So my goal and role is to bring out the remarkableness in Jane Goodall, not for me to try to convince you that I'm remarkable.
Yeah. I love
So
that.
that's
So
it.
you're dedicated to bringing out the best in your guests by highlighting how remarkable they are. I
Well,
love that you use Descript because I'm just that much Venn diagram similar now to Guy Kawasaki.
yeah. So if you use Descript and Squadcast, we would be basically overlapping.
Yeah.
And I also think one of the most one of the highest forms of praise for me as a podcaster is when a guest says, "No one has ever asked me that before."
Yeah.
because it means that you prepared and you have an insight into the guest that nobody else has ever had. Because if you listen to most podcasts, they all ask the same questions. And some of them are really dumbass questions. I mean, there are podcasts where the host always asks, so do you think your book will impact your reader? Well, dumb shit. Like, what author doesn't write a book that you think is going to impact the lives of the people who read it? I mean, what a dumbass question.
Yeah.
So I hate dumbass questions. So duh. I
I'm,
mean,
I'm
if you're thinking, when you hear a question like that, and if you say to yourself, well, duh, of course, then that's a bad question.
That's hilarious. Now I feel like you're just egging on the crowd the next time that they're going to see you on stage. Like that's going to be the one question that they're going to ask you. So, guy,
Yeah.
that'll be
Do you
hilarious.
think your speech is going to impact customers? Or do you think your speech will impact people? Well, yeah, I'm getting paid for it, so it's going to impact me. Yeah. No, I hate questions like that. I just hate questions like that.
So then out of all the episodes that you've done so far today on the Remarkable People podcast, which one would you say is your favorite? Knowing like the daughter's instrument that she was playing and whatnot, or what are some other ones that you're just like, you know what? That to me was the most memorable one.
Well, see, now you should wipe out the well. That's a filler word. This is a very difficult question. And it's because every Wednesday at 6:30 a.m. Pacific, we release a new episode. And I swear, every Wednesday at 7 a.m., I think that's the best episode we ever have. And I've said that 100 times. So it's like, you think it's all, well, you, but people listening to this, I'm like, oh, guy, you're so full of shit. You're just, promoting your podcast. But I'm telling you, nobody has a guest list like me. And I just suspend disbelief for a second and just go listen to a few episodes. And it really, when you have 100 guests, and it's not like I'm a sports podcaster, so I have, just 50 baseball players and 50 football players. I have just all kinds of people who are remarkable, but not necessarily rich or famous. And so I have a very broad spectrum of, from a fantastic, probably the best photo editor for the New York Times, who, is talking about how she worked for Life and Sports Illustrated and the New York Times, and how she got this is a great story. You want to talk about storytelling? So she was at Life when Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Wow.
And she was the person who worked with the photographer. He was an intern who caught the famous picture of the people on the balcony who were pointing there at, the person who shot Martin Luther King. And so she was tasked with getting those photographs, and this is back in the days of film, to New York to publish. And so she goes to the airport to pick up the photographer because he had to fly there from Memphis with the photos. And they're in the cab, and she says, give me the negatives. And he says, well, I developed the film and had it printed because I was afraid that someone would seize the negatives. And he had taped the photographs to his chest so that nobody could get it. So in the back of this cab, she's kind of undressing him and getting the photos. And it's that kind of story. I mean, the story behind that famous photo is so great.
Yeah.
Her
Wow.
name is Karen Malarkey, by the way, if you're
No, I
looking for
love
which
that.
episode. Yeah.
Just the way that you're describing it. I mean, I totally forgot that I was actually supposed to be podcasting at the moment. It's like so just so captivated by this story in and of itself, because you could just imagine what was going on
Oh,
in their
yeah.
heads and around them, and just how stressful that could possibly be. And so then, Guy, between like all of the podcast episodes that you've done, the books, your career, all the wonderful, amazing storytellers that you've been surrounded by, if you were to tell the Agency Accelerated audience what really makes a good story, what do you think would be the best tip for them?
Well, first of all, let us establish the foundation that I think that storytelling is the key to communication. And David Ocker, in his episode, makes a very strong case that, and we were talking about vaccination. He says that many people believe that you should use facts, that, you know, you're 11 times more likely to die without vaccination, or 90% of the people who are in the hospital have not been vaccinated. And when you use facts, there's always ways to argue a fact. And you could say, well, yeah, 90% of people in the hospital are not vaccinated, but blah, 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 right? There's some, conspiracy theory about, I don't know, maybe you're in the hospital, who knows, whatever. So he said,
Yeah.
instead of using facts, you should use stories. The story is, my grandfather was not vaccinated. He got COVID. He's in the hospital. Now he'll never see his grandchildren. You can't argue that. You can't say, no, he will. He's not in the hospital. I checked. That's,
Yeah.
stories are much more difficult to argue against. So he said stories are much more powerful. And so I think that is a key lesson. And the podcast is filled with stories like that. Now, having said that, uh, you know, just to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, when you're the recipient of a story, you should be cognizant of the fact that it is harder to argue against a story, and a story is not science. Science is where you have a controlled experiment and you have a meaningful pool of tests and subjects. So, that's like saying, to use a negative example, uh, my father smoked for a pack a day for 60 years and he never got lung cancer. That's a
Yeah.
story. You can't argue against that story, assuming it's true. You can't argue that, no, he did get lung cancer and he died. You're wrong. So you can't argue about that. But he may be the outlier. That, generally speaking, if we all smoked a pack a day for 60 years, most of us would die. He happened to be the exception. That doesn't mean you should smoke a pack every day. So that's I think, the cautionary part of storytelling. Now, I forget what the question was.
What do you think makes for a good story?
Oh, okay. Right. All right.
I think where you were
Okay.
going
So,
was really talking about how storytelling really
yes.
captures someone's imagination. It's really hard to fact check it all the
First,
time and all the different things, but it makes it much more memorable. But go ahead.
yeah. So, first of all, you have to be quick enough on your feet and smart enough to discern what story to tell in what situation. So, and that is to use a sports analogy, you have to be a quarterback and you have to call an audible after the huddle. So, to to use this podcast as an example, I had no intention, no plan of telling any particular story. But I thought that at the moment you asked me about, you know, that story or telling a story, I used the example of Karen Malarkey, the photo editor, and how she got the Martin Luther King assassination photo into Life magazine.
Yeah.
And hopefully that was an appropriate story that stuck with the audience based on the question you asked me. So some of it is just, you got to be able to audible. And I think the only way you get to be able to audible, if you think about it, continuing the quarterback metaphor, is you have to play in a lot of games. So when to call an audible. And that means you have to do a lot of speaking. You have to do a lot of presenting. You have to get it so that you're completely relaxed and you're not working off a teleprompter or a script or note cards. And, if you ask me another question, I'll find another story for it, but I have to do it in real time. And that is a hard thing to do. So,
Yeah.
and okay, so let's assume that you figure that out. But then I think that storytelling is a very easy skill in a sense, because unlike debating or unlike sort of formalistic ways of speaking, everybody tells stories, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you go and play mahjong with your group of people and you're telling stories. You didn't go to the mahjong game and say, okay, like, these are the key points I got to get in my story. Let's, like, tell, it's It's you remember that scene in Crazy Rich Asians where they're playing mahjong and the Nick's mom is finding out from the other. I don't know if they're playing mahjong, playing something. Uh, Finds out. See, this is a story about a story. So she finds out that her son is coming to a wedding in Singapore, bringing a girl that no one knows anything about.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
so, you know, my point is that I think many people or most people are natural storytellers
Yeah.
because that's how you communicate in life.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. When you were talking about the mahjong, I was thinking about the movie, but I have a 6-year-old, and every day, she comes home from school, and I'm just like, "Tell me about your day." And there's a
Yeah.
story about what happened at the playground and
Yeah.
who was being mean and how she solved that problem. And you're
Yep.
just, oh
And
yeah, and
and she didn't need PowerPoint to do that, right?
she didn't need sound effects. No,
Nope.
yeah,
Nope.
it's a. I love the fact that you bring up, when you have stories, it's nice to have them on hand. I don't think a lot of people practice that or even have like a story bank to refer back to, because if you're not a podcaster, if you're not a content creator, sometimes you're just consuming the stories that come in. But when you
But
have it at least like jotted down of like, hey, this is what I
well,
remember about this person.
yeah, and I could go either way on this because I am not suggesting that every one of you start a story bank and scrub your brain and put it into index cards or put it on in Microsoft Word or a template or something like that. I think storytelling is much more natural because we use it every day when you come home from work, when you come home from school, than these are the 3 key points I need to make with my 10 slides. I mean,
Yeah.
that is very unnatural. And so all of my talks are basically top 10s. And each of my top 10 recommendation comes with a story. Now, I have been doing that for 30 or 40 years, so it comes naturally to me at this point. But I think when you give a presentation, using a top 10 format is very useful because it adds structure and it communicates to the audience, this is how long the speech is going to be. You can kind of plot your way, because if a speaker stands up and says, I got my top 10 lessons about innovation, and he or she says number 5 is get to the next curve, well, you kind of know, well, he or she said there's going to be 10, he's number 5, he's halfway done. And that's very settling, because I've sat in on keynotes and the person is just rambling and rambling and rambling. I'm like, what the hell? When the hell do we come to the end of this damn thing? So this way you can, communicate to your audience that you're halfway done or you're 2/3 of the way done. And some of the pressure is removed.
Yeah. It's kind of like you have the setup for them, so they get to kind of know where they are at in your presentation or in your
Yeah.
storytelling in and of that sense. Yeah.
Well, hopefully your audience is not wondering when the hell you'll be done. But if they are, it's better that they know. And yes, so if I could make a recommendation to someone making a keynote, and I've made this recommendation many times, but nobody ever listens to me about this. And that's because I don't know why. Maybe it's just a bad recommendation. But the top 10 format for a keynote is a very useful thing. It adds structure, and
Yeah.
then it adds discipline. And you have these 10 key points, and you come up with 10 stories, and bada bing, bada bang. Once it's 10 and these 10 stories and these 10 points, you can relax. And then you can just tell stories. What a great idea.
Yeah, when we talk about like presentations too, I find that some people, when they're trying to remember the facts and all the bullet points and all the different things that they have to say, that puts a lot more pressure. But when you're telling a story,
Yeah.
you don't
Well,
always tell the story the same way every single time.
yeah. And, when you need to remember facts, as I just quoted David Ocker from my podcast, facts are not that powerful. Let me say this very succinctly. If facts were powerful, we would not have a pandemic, because people would have gotten the facts and masked up. They would have gotten the facts and maintained social distance. They would have gotten the facts, even if it took a while. 90% of the world would be vaccinated, right? I mean, it is factual that we should do this. But obviously, half the world thinks that if you get vaccinated, Bill Gates is placing a microchip in you to track you. Now, never mind that Tim Cook has your phone and knows every word you said and every place you've been. But Bill Gates is going to put a microchip in there and he's going to cause me to what? Standardize on Microsoft Office? I mean, you know, like, don't get me started. So the point is that the I'm gonna counter you. The point is that stories are more powerful than facts. That
Yeah.
should be that should be a key lesson for anybody. When you pitch a customer or potential customer, you should use stories because I mean, unless you got a fact like social media per sale is 10 times more effective than magazine advertising. Okay, that's a powerful fact. But I would, if let's say that, that's part of your pitch that we want you to use social media. Instagram is 10 times more effective per dollar than magazine advertising. Okay, that's a good fact. I concede that. But then I would follow that up with, for example, when Madison Reed made the pivot from analog hair dyeing salons to online and
Yeah.
utilized Instagram to show their new colors, they found that this was 10 times more effective than ads they were running in the New York Times Sunday magazine. That's a fact and a story, but that's much more
Yeah.
powerful than just the fact.
Yeah, I love that. That's so smart. So for everyone that's tuning in, you've got like Anna, you've got Chad, you've got the whole entire crew here. They're just I'm seeing the view count like climb up in the comments all all coming through. So hey, listen,
I
if you're just what was that guy?
I just want them to subscribe to my podcast.
It's a damn good podcast. And we're about to
Yeah.
celebrate the 100th episode.
Would
That's going to be
would we lie?
amazing. Yeah. So hey crew, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the importance of stories and how agencies can help their clients tell great stories. But first, just a quick reminder and bonus, the show is brought to you by Agora Pulse, voted the number one
Mhm.
social media management tool by customers on the planet's top review sites. And if you're looking for an easy way to increase and diversify your agency's revenue streams, Agora Pulse has a free webinar to help you do exactly that. Make sure you head on over to bit.ly/ad agency revenue to sign up, learn, and start driving more revenue from social media services. So, having
Hey,
said that, let me give a quick shout. We've got Anthony Samu, who's here. He's always tuning in. Chad Illa Peterson guy, one of my fantastic friends that I recently saw at Video Marketing World, and he's a great storyteller as well. And I know that he's probably going gaga right now with the fact that, like, oh my God, Stephanie said Guy Kawasaki and Chad in the same sentence.
that's what I was thinking. My name was in the
Yeah.
same sentence with Chad's.
Oh, you just made his day. Oh my goodness. He's gonna like
Can I point
de-script
out
flip
something
that.
to you?
Yeah, what's
Okay.
up?
Okay. So I can tell you how to make your Agora Pulse promotion better, right?
Please do.
Okay. So you should, do your Agora Pulse, whatever you said, which I can't remember, which is part of the problem. But I think what you should say is, your Agora Pulse blurb, and then you say, for example,
There you go.
Procter and Gamble. Excuse me. For example, you got to wipe that part out with Descript where I said that wrong. So you say, for example, Procter and Gamble uses Agorapulse and it increased the sales of Swiffer by 10 times. That's a story. And now people are going to remember, yeah, Procter and Gamble uses Agorapulse and it helped them sell 10 times more Swiffers. I got to use that. There
That's
you go.
brilliant. There you go. Hey, we're all about feedback, right? There is no failure, there's always feedback. So
I don't
love
know
that.
about that, but yeah. Sometimes they're failures.
Like,
Oh.
yeah, I think that if you make a mistake and you keep making the same mistake, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're a dipshit. Yeah, it's true. That is true. At
Love
least
it.
make different mistakes.
That's true. let's just try to make it a little bit better, at least 1% different, yeah?
Yeah, at least.
At least, at least.
Hey, what else?
All right, cool. So you were talking about Crazy Rich Asians earlier, right?
Yeah.
And
You
there
know
was a
why?
moment there's a moment
Because
where you were talking about you measure your success not by by awards, not by Rotten Tomatoes scores. So not by money, you're measuring your success by
oh,
the future success of your actors and actresses.
oh, you did listen to that episode. See, I'm impressed. There you go. So now I'm thinking, wow, she's really prepared. You are for those of for, for those of you who are wondering what the hell we're talking about. So one of my guests on Remarkable People is the none and all, bleh, the one and only John M. Chu, the
Yep.
director of Crazy Rich Asians and Into the Heights. And he talks about how he directed Crazy Rich Asians. And in the middle of this podcast, he kept talking about, I can't remember the actors and actresses' names, but he kept talking about, oh yeah, such and such went on to this, and such went on to that, and such went on to this after Crazy Rich Asians. I said, you're not talking about your Rotten Tomato scores. You're not talking about how much it grossed. You're talking about the success of the actors and actresses after the show. And I've never seen anybody measure success in that way. And that's John M. Chu, who, come to find out, his father is Chef Chu. So if you're in the Bay Area and you're ever in Los Altos and you need good Chinese food, go to Chef Chu's. And small world story, is that when I was an undergrad at Stanford, eating at Chef Chu's was one of the great treats in undergraduate life. So there's this hook already.
I love that. I was just like,
Yeah.
I was trying to
Yeah.
imagine all the actors and the actresses. And isn't it Gemma who's in the new Eternals?
I don't know. I my my favorite part of Crazy Rich Asians is when the tiger mom, the
Yes.
the rich guy's mom, well, they're in this study group, a Bible study group in her house. Fabulously wealthy person, right? And they're in this house, and there's these two mixed cultures here. They're kind of five yentas playing mahjong, and she gets the call that her son is coming to the wedding with this woman that they don't know anything about. So she gets up from the table and takes the call. And all the other women, the housewives at the table, they're wondering what the hell's going on. What's going this? Who's her son bringing and all that. And she kind of puts the phone aside and she goes, um, "I got to take this call. Just keep going on to Colossians and I'll catch up." And that was just the funniest line. You had to be there if you don't find that funny. But yeah, anyway.
I feel like the whole entire crew is about to go ahead and watch Crazy Rich Asians again.
You should. Crazy. There are people who think, as Asians, they think, oh, Crazy Rich Asians is bad because it stereotypes us as materialistic people who all want Lamborghinis and buying Louis Vuitton golf bags and all that. And I'm an Asian, and I was not offended. I thought it was the funniest damn thing I had ever seen.
Yeah, one of my favorites from there was Aquafina.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, her personality, just even like her raspy voice, I absolutely love everything about her. And I remember
Wait, was
even
she
in the
the?
interview,
Wait, which character was she?
she was the best
Say this.
friend. She was the best friend
The
of the
tomboy
girl.
one.
Yeah,
The
she's
one that
supposed
when she went to the house and her father is dressed in, like, I don't know, gold lame robe or
everything.
something. Yeah.
Yes.
But that there are people like that. I've met them. It's true. It's so true. I loved Crazy Rich Asians. I don't.
It's a good one. It's a good one. I mean, to be honest with you, I think I read the whole entire trilogy. I think
Yeah,
even before the movie had came out, or sometime
yeah.
from that, but it was really good. And so, Guy, I love the fact that we can all learn from you so much as far as when you're interviewing people and giving them the time and the space to tell their stories. Also, make sure that they freaking sound remarkable. in the sense that you're editing out what needs to be edited out. But even before that, what's your process for determining who you interview? Like, how
Oh,
do you choose who's specific? Like,
yeah.
you start off with Jane Goodall, the very first one, and you're like, how am I going to follow up with that?
Yeah, well, I still don't have Michelle Obama, but um so there are some people who are very obvious, right? So you want Michelle Obama, you want Stacey Abrams. I can't think of a Republican you would want because there are no remarkable Republicans. Oh, that guy Adam Kinzinger or Hisinger or Kiplinger or whatever, the guy who's like the anti-Trump Republican, I would have him. If I could get to him, I would do him. But anyway, I digress. I don't want to get too political and offend your audience. What I see, there's no applause coming. But anyway, so so there are some people who are obviously remarkable. The Jane Goodall, Michelle Obama, you know, I had Julia Cameron, those kinds of people. Basically, any MacArthur Award winner would qualify, in my humble opinion. So that's the easy ones. But my podcast is not rich people and it's not famous people. So to take an example, if the person who's in charge of Goldman Sachs asked to be on my podcast, I would tell them no, because what are you besides rich? What have you done to make the world a better place? So it's not rich or famous, it's remarkable. So I have had people who you never heard of because they were snuck across the US Mexico border as a baby and now they work for Adobe. It's a remarkable story of how she was smuggled by coyotes and is now a marketing person at Adobe. You would not have heard of her. So that's a remarkable story. And those kind of people qualify. So uh, a lot of it is when people write books, I'm in the flow. So PR firms always reach out to me about upcoming books. A lot of it is that people who listen to my podcast and love my podcast, they contact me and say, listen, I love your podcast. And I know the woman who is the only director of an opera in the United States and she is in charge of the San Francisco Opera. I'm making this up. So it's somebody like that. Like, I'm not an opera buff. How would I know who this person is? But if somebody in the know says, okay, she's the only woman opera director, I that qualifies right there. I can tell you that right now. So that's how people who love your podcast will recommend people that they think would fit in. And that's a very rich vein, arguably the richest vein, because it's very hard to get even to that opera director just saying, I'm Guy Kawasaki with my podcast. You want somebody who already knows her, even if your podcast is fairly well known, because there's no assumption that she knows who the hell I am or cares. So you need somebody who connects the two of you. Now, I also want to address the flip side. And the flip side is even funnier. The flip side is that every day I get a request from either Joe Blow or Joe Blow's person. And the pitch always goes like this. I enjoy your podcasts. In particular, David Ocker, Jane Goodall, Linda Zhang from Ford. I really enjoy your podcast. And I think I would be a great guest for you because I'm remarkable too. I have started a consulting firm and we're doing over $1 million. I have written a book. It's called Secrets of Success by Joe Blow, published by Blow Publishing. And so I think that I should be on your podcast too. And I got to tell you, it takes every ounce of strength from me and resistance and control to not send back an email and say, how the hell do you figure that you are on the same league as Jane Goodall? Just like, educate me here. But I don't, because I'm a kinder, gentler person in my old age. And so I send back a kind email. Actually, I have a virtual assistant doing it because it's just easier for me to do it that way. But, we just say we're very busy, sorry, blah, blah, blah. But I got to tell you, man, it just amazes me sometimes about people who think that they are remarkable. And as a rule of thumb, I'm really going to get in trouble now. But as a rule of thumb, I would say that if somebody asks to be on your podcast, you probably don't want them on your podcast. It's kind of like Groucho Marx. I would not join a club that wants me as a member. So, and that is a That is a part of doing business. So, um, I don't know. That's how I roll. What can I say? For better or for worse. Now all your audience is saying, "What an arrogant asshole." He's just like,
No, I feel like all the PR folks and all the influencer outreach, they're all like, well, damn it, I know what I'm working on today.
well, but I mean, seriously. Okay, so let's be more constructive then. So, if you want to pitch me, not that I'm the center of the podcasting world, but if you wanted to pitch NPR, I mean, let's take the extreme, the gold standard. If you wanted to pitch Terry Gross, which I have never been successful in pitching myself. So, I'm not remarkable enough for Terry Gross. But you know what? You got to figure that she's getting 10 requests a day, maybe an hour. So you have to stand out from all that noise. And if you think your pitch that says, well, I represent Joe Blow of Blow Consulting, and it's over $1 million practice, and he's written a book called The Blow Away, published by Blow Press. If you think Terry Gross, if you think you're going to get past the producers, personal assistants, personal assistants, personal assistants with that pitch, you are on drugs. You have got to have a really compelling story. And it doesn't mean that you have to be Michelle Obama to get on NPR, but you better have a really compelling story, more so than I've been successful in creating a 7-digit consulting firm.
Yeah, my goodness. That's a it's it's one of those things where I'm just kind of like, how do you separate yourself from the sea of sameness, right? I feel like you have to do a
Yeah.
little bit more and research and find the common thread because I would imagine that you have a certain criteria for who you bring onto the show. And it might
Well,
not be
and you go on. I don't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say that it's probably unspoken, but as a listener, you could pick up on those certain cues and then see if it would be a good fit. But to your point, some people just are out there just for them.
Well, I mean, really, a good rule of thumb is if somebody asks, they're probably not worthy. Like, I don't anticipate Michelle Obama, Stacey Abrams, uh, who, these, like, if you said, Guy, who's your fantasy? Who do you want that you have not gotten? It would be, if I had one choice, if God said to me, Guy, I'll give you one guess, pick anybody, one guess, I would say Stacey Abrams. Now,
Wow.
I don't think she'll be calling me up, if you know what I mean. But I've said this on podcasts about 5 times. So I know one day Stacey Abrams or Stacey Abrams' best friend or Stacey
Yeah.
Abrams' PR person is going to be listening. They're going to say, shit, we should get her on that show. Because, but hey,
Yeah.
you got to cast a big net. So but I think it's really a point of working backwards from your audience. So if let's put it more in the guise of the people who are probably listening, because no ad agency is going to bring on Stacey Abrams because Stacey Abrams is so political that any ad agency or PR agency is thinking, oh, if I bring on Stacey Abrams, then the NRA will never use me as an agency, which I would argue is a good thing, but we don't need to go there. So, who you should think of who's listening to an agency podcast. What would they be interested in? If it were me, I would say, well, if I were a marketing or salesperson listening to podcasts, who would I want to hear interviewed? It would be David Ocker, Bob Cialdini, Angela Duckworth, Scott Galloway, let's see, Katie Milkman, uh, who else? Simon Sinek, Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tim Ferriss, iJustine, Marquez Brownlee. If I were an agency, okay, let's take the case of Marquez Brownlee, who I can't even get him. I would love to hear how a black young adult, graduated from college, Frisbee player, now has, I don't know, 30 million YouTube subscribers. Now, he gets the Tesla, he gets the Porsche, he gets the MacBook, he gets everything before anybody else. How did he do that? If you had a choice between having Kara Swisher or Marquez Brownlee talk about your product, who would you pick? I would pick Marquez Brownlee. How did he get to that? Every agency in the world should want to know, how the hell did Marquez Brownlee become Marquez Brownlee? That would be, he would be my second choice to Stacey Abrams, really. So I think now my message here is, you got to think about your customer. Who would they want to hear? Marquez Brownlee, not Joe Blow from Blow Consulting.
I'm cracking up over here because I know that our
What?
team has probably written down all of these names, and they're like, yes, 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 and yes, yeah. I absolutely, I love that because there are a lot of times, you know, to your point, a lot of people are out there just to pitch their services and whatnot. But when we had Alan Kay on the show and he was talking about the his campaign, when you see something, say something.
Yeah.
The way that that whole entire story unfolded and the fact that it wasn't about profit, it was about making a
Yep.
positive impact in the world after right after 9/11, the
Yep.
state of what was happening in the world and how that really pushed him to make that campaign where anyone, if they wanted to run with it, they could. No charge whatsoever. As long as he got credit for it. That was probably the one episode where we got so much feedback from people about, wow, I can't believe that. That was amazing. So thank you for
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah.
Wow. I know him. Maybe I should bring him on my podcast. I never.
He was great. He was
Yeah.
so
Okay.
good. Yeah. Yeah. We even
Okay.
had one of our listeners, Yvonne Hyman, who was at the airport and she saw the ad and she had
Yeah.
tweeted it and was just like, I learned that from Alan Kay.
Yeah. Too bad David Ogilvy's not alive.
That's true. So
Yep.
we're
Okay.
just about to wrap up because you've got a surfboard coming along the way. I know you're counting down. I know it's 4 hours away, but you're still excited. You're going to be imagining where you're going to put it and all the different things. So, Agency Accelerated fam, this is your one chance to like ask your questions now. If you've got questions about storytelling, all the different things, bring it through. Actually, someone asked earlier, Guy,
Yes.
let me find it. It was he was asking about the Harvard graduate that was deaf and blind that you
Oh,
did the interview
uh,
with.
Haben Gurma.
Robin Grimm. Yeah.
Do I have her book right here? Yeah, so she graduated from Harvard Law School, deaf and blind. Wrap your mind around that. Hard enough to go to Harvard Law School if you're not deaf and blind. She did it deaf and blind. She's now a disability rights activist. And yeah, so that was, let's just say that was a challenging podcast for technical reasons, because the way it worked is I say the question, her her personal helper, whatever, hears me. He types it into a device that then uses braille, so she feels my question and then has to respond. Now, she lost her sight and hearing in her teenage years, so she can't speak. Otherwise, oh my God, if she had to braille it back and then he had to read it back, it would really, my head would explode. So, quite a fascinating, great sense of humor. It was quite an episode, yeah. And that is one case where I like to wipe out the long pauses unless it serves a purpose, like communicating great cogitation. But in that case, I left all the long pauses in because I wanted people to have a sense of, this is what it's like to communicate with someone who's deaf and blind, who has to go through multiple steps. That hearing person hears it, types it, then you have to feel it in your fingertips. Yeah, that's a lot harder than just listening. So that's
Yeah.
the story of that episode. Haben Gurma.
Robin Grimm. Yeah. So that was a really good one. And then we have Chad who popped into the comments again. And he says that we're all natural storytellers. Of course,
Yep.
that's how we communicate. We talk about what's going on in our day, how it made us feel, and all the different things. And so that's absolutely amazing. He's also saying that he now needs to have a team of personal assistants and gatekeepers.
That's when you truly know you've arrived. Yep.
You've arrived. You've absolutely arrived.
I don't have any.
You have that one. You have that one virtual assistant for when
Well,
Joe
yeah, but
Blow
I
from
don't have
Blow
any
Publishing.
gatekeepers, man. My email is guykawasaki@gmail. Or, it's gonna come right through.
It's gonna come right through to you. So,
Oh,
so Guy,
yes.
you've said before in the past, right? You've said, I think my podcast is the best work I've ever done in my career. Why do you think that is? Of all the books, all the speaking engagements, and all the different things, why would you say that the podcast is the best body of work that you've created?
Well, maybe it's because at 67, I finally figured out something. It would be very well. First of all, if somebody of 25, Joe Blow's 25 years old says, "This is the best work I've ever done of my career," and you say, "Okay, so your career is 4 years long, BFD." Like, so what if it's the best work of your past 4 years? Well, prior to that, what were you? So, partly is because I'm 67 and now I have the benefit of hindsight. And I will tell you that I truly do believe I was just born to podcast. And one of my regrets is that I was not smart enough to embrace the podcasting medium earlier. I've only done it for 2 years because it's a 100th episode and I do 52 a year. So if I had done it for 5 or 6 years when Dave Weiner, who has been on the podcast, invented podcasting, man, I would be like bigger than Joe Rogan today. So sometimes, it's timing is everything.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on the live audio rooms, those Clubhouse chat rooms, and all
Yeah,
those other those Twitter
I
Spaces?
yeah, I I jumped on Clubhouse and I didn't build up a following of millions of people, but after a while, and I have not been on Clubhouse for months now, and I really don't know how it's doing. So, how is it doing before I put my foot in my mouth? How is it doing? Is it still as hot as ever?
As far as I know, I think it's kind of died out. I mean, you
Oh
have
yeah.
Twitter Spaces, and then Facebook is
Yeah.
now opening up live audio to all other users at this point. I don't know.
Well, but forget Clubhouse specifically, but as a genre of social audio, is it sticking or not?
I think it is in the sense of you kind of get that live aspect of it without the pressure of
Yeah.
having to be on camera.
Yeah. Like we are now. Well, my what made me lose interest in Clubhouse was that whenever I went into rooms, I mean, it seemed like every room was about, I'm a self-made millionaire and you could be as successful as I am. I'm talking to you today free, but if you click on the link in my profile, it'll take you to my Instagram. And at Instagram, you'll see that I have a $500 course on how to be successful in social media. But for you, today's special, it's 250. And it was like so much, it was just so many wannabes talking to so many other has-beens that I just could not wrap my mind around hearing everybody talk about, like, everybody on in Clubhouse. This is 6 months ago. Everybody in Clubhouse was a self-made millionaire. I mean, there's like nobody poor in Clubhouse. Everybody was bragging about how great they're doing. I was like so sick of that bullshit. And everybody's there like, yeah, I made 7 digits being a real estate broker in my first month. And I've written down those secrets. If you click on the link in my profile, I'll show you how you can be rich too. And I just got so sick of that shit that I just stopped.
I'm cracking up, and I'm also loving the fact that they've got a gardener out here in the background. But you,
Oh,
Guy,
that's not a sound effect. That's a leaf blower.
it's yeah, he's out there. He's having a good time. Seriously, Guy, this was so much fun. Seriously, it just talking to you and the realness that comes out,
Oh,
and
Lord.
I love everything that you had to share. I think whoever is going to be editing this and Descript is going to have one hell of a good time trying to figure out what they want to pull out. I think if I were to share, like, when you were saying that you always want to show what's remarkable about your guest and how you do all those extra things for them, the
Mhm.
one little like irk that I have when people are repurposing content for like audiograms is that they don't edit the typos, or they say one thing, but then the word that's been transcribed is different. Have you ever seen that?
Okay, so we can address that too. So I see that all the time. And for the longest time, I would just put up a computer generated test transcript. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I just looked at them. I said, oh man, they're just not accurate. And so if you try to really edit a machine transcribed transcription, you would spend 4 or 5 hours working on that. Especially, especially if you have a guest like Jane Goodall and she says, I was in the no village in Nairobi. Like, what the hell? What village? It's not like I know which, village in Nairobi that was. How do I even look up that word? It's really difficult to accurately transcribe stuff. But then I stopped transcribing because I figured, well, of the thousands of people who downloaded, well, none of them are deaf because they wouldn't download it. But how many people are really using the transcript? Now, I'm all about equal access, so I feel, and after I interviewed Haben, I really felt convicted that because I wasn't putting enough resources into transcription, I was shortchanging the world of knowledge. And it was immoral for me to have this knowledge, but not take it the last step and get it transcribed. So after Haben convicted me, my procedure now is I take the audio, I send it to a company called Rev, and Rev has people who are maybe the first pass is a machine, but the second pass is definitely a human because it is too good when it comes back to be not a human. Now, it may be, for all I know, someone with a PhD in English working in Bangalore, but somehow some very intelligent person is editing my Rev transcription. But my Rev transcription comes to me, and then I have someone local. I have 2 or 3 people who work locally, and they are trained to understand how my podcast in particular works, so they really understand the nuances, so they can shorten the paragraphs. They can more accurately change the punctuation. They are more familiar with the proper nouns that would come across in my podcast. So after I spend, let's see, probably $100 per hour for the Rev transcription, and then I have someone who spends another 2 hours. So 2 humans go at my transcriptions, and then we put it out. And I just hope that enough people care about that. But I feel it's a moral obligation on my part to transcribe as high quality as I can.
I love that. I love how much time and effort you put into making
Oh.
sure that the stories you collect can be downloaded, can be read, can be shared, and
I,
experienced by other people. Because
listen, if they ever make a movie, OCD Asians, I will be the star.
starring Guy Kawasaki.
Directed by John M. Chu. Music by Lin-Manuel Miranda. That's right. Coming
I
to you
love
on
it.
Netflix now.
Boom.
Yep.
Wait, no,
Maybe
Apple
they'll
TV, right?
maybe they'll have Ted Lasso be my character. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. So, Guy,
Okay.
what's the best way to reach you? Guy
Guy
at Gmail?
Kawasaki at Gmail.
There you
Hard to
go.
remember. My name at Gmail. If you can't remember that, don't write to me.
All right, crew, you heard it here. If you have any other comments or questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. That's all that we have today, friends. But don't worry, we have so much more coming up for you. Fantastic series of shows coming up. And who knows, maybe all of those amazing, wonderful people that Guy had just mentioned, we'll get them in the lineup too, because whoever it
All
is that
right.
you want to hear from, let's get them all on the show. So in our next episode, let me tell you who's going to be coming in. Drum roll.
Stacey Abrams.
If I got Stacey Abrams before you, you'd probably come after us.
I would. I really would. I would.
Love it.
Wow. Or I'd kill myself.
Oh, stop. So the next one is we're going to have an agency coach who has spent years building up a multi-million-dollar marketing agency and now teaches other agencies his systems and structure. It's Lee Goff, followed by Jarek Robbins, Kelly Mirabella, and so much more. And P.S., by the way, if you have other names, please go ahead and let us know. That way we could go ahead and start pitching them out and start building those relationships. As always, remember to subscribe to the calendar at agorapulse.com/calendar. if you want to be sure to catch our live episodes, because honestly, Chad, you got your name mentioned in the same sentence as Guy Kawasaki. That's got to be like a game changer right there. We
No,
just made your
no,
whole damn year.
don't forget to get Joe Blow of Blow Consulting.
It's Joe Blow at Blow Consulting. Oh, goodness gracious. And remember, Agency
Oh,
Accelerated is available on all podcast channels, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon. So hit us up, leave a review, let us know what you think. Thank you all so much for being here. Guy, you got to send us a
hi.
picture of you on that surfboard.
Okay.
All
Bye.
right. See ya.